Ascent Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Reinvention Formula, How to Unlock a Bulletproof Mindset to Upgrade Your Life, by Craig Siegel. Forward by John Gordon. Narrated by Craig Siegel. I humbly dedicate this book to my family, my parents and my brother Mark, as well as my fiancée Alessia, for the creation of this book. My parents' unwavering love and support for me throughout my life has contributed a great deal to my success, and their beautiful core values will always be ingrained in my DNA. My best friend and brother Mark is the perfect sibling, who has always been my biggest fan, cheerleader, and confidant. Alessia, my heart, is my person, my soulmate, and my co-pilot in life. I hope everyone has a rock of support like the one I've been blessed with. My inner circle is the foundation of my identity and a big part of the rise of CLS, and more specifically, my reinvention. I love each of you with every ounce of me, and I hope you find great joy and pride in what we've created here. We're just getting warmed up. For the person who feels stuck right now, feels unhappy and unfulfilled, as if you know you are here for a much bigger purpose, but you can't seem to find your way, or you think you're too old, or it's too late, or happiness, impact, and abundance just isn't in the cards for you, then I want you to know this. You are absolutely valued, appreciated, and here by no coincidence. Your best is yet to come, and reinvention is ready when you are. Forward. If you feel stuck, or that it's too late to change, or that your dream life will never happen, I'm glad you're listening to this book. Craig Siegel is the embodiment of reinvention and transformation. After a 13-year career on Wall Street, he transformed pain into purpose, the mundane into meaning, and drifting into drive by reinventing himself with a new mission and purpose to impact the lives of others. As someone who went from being a miserable restaurant owner and unfulfilled entrepreneur in the emerging world of wireless software 23 years ago, to becoming a 14-time best-selling author and speaker, I relate to Craig's valuable experience, powerful messages, and life-changing lessons. I had to reinvent myself as Craig did, and I'm thankful he has created a formula that anyone who is unhappy with their life and career can apply for a new beginning. It's never too late to create the life that you want and become all that you are meant to be. You just have to be willing to take action and have the courage to change. And this is why this book is so important. It gives you the inspiration, encouragement, belief, and formula to make the changes you are fearful of making. Overcoming fear is the greatest battle you will face on your path to your destiny and victory. We all need encouragers and guides along the way, and with this book, you have a master guide in Craig Siegel. A guide goes before you. They have navigated the challenging path you now face. They went through it, so they can now help you through it. Craig Siegel's message and lessons resonate so deeply because he has walked the walk, and now his talk hits deep and spreads far and wide. I remember the first time I saw one of Craig's messages and videos on social media. I was like, who is this guy? He caught my attention. I knew there was something special about him. He wasn't a pretender. He was the real deal with the heart to serve and impact others. Since then, I have seen his career impact skyrocket, and I'm not surprised. While Craig's new career was taking off, he was also bringing everyone along with him. He was miserable when focused on himself, and knew happiness is doing life with others and helping them get better. He knows, as I wrote in The Carpenter, you aren't a true success unless you help others be successful. And what does it mean to be successful? As David Jeremiah says, success is the fulfillment of God's plan for your life. If you feel like there's more for you, it's because there is an inner voice telling you that you are meant for and created for more. God has always been in the reinvention and transformation business, and thankfully, so is Craig Siegel. I'm thrilled you are listening to this book that Craig wrote to help you create the successful life you were born to live. Don't wait for it to happen. Start creating it today. John Gordon, 14-time best-selling author of The Energy Bus, The Seed, and The Power of Positive Leadership. Preface. You will never influence the world by trying to be like it. Sean McCabe. Spoiler alert. It's true. We're going to dive deep on all the tools, strategies, mindset shifts, stories, principles, and lessons required to totally reinvent yourself in this world. However, just like the self-help event junkies I've come to know, please understand that knowledge is not power, it's potential power, pending on what you do with it. You must be available to both receive the nuggets and go all in on the concepts and tactics. It's not enough to just consume the content here. You must digest and apply it. Let's make a promise right now before we go any further. We're not going to just be interested in the teachings inside this book. We're going to be committed. In fact, we're going to be all in to level up, push way past our current comfort zones to really take uncomfortable and messy action. Deal? Okay, great. That said, I'll never tell you to follow me. I prefer that you come with me to a whole new life of abundance, blessings, being at the right place at the right time, having the wrong people exit your life in a timely fashion, form the right relationships, the creative divine downloads, and a newfound unwavering self-belief and courage to identify your God-given gifts and fulfill your assignment by making a massive impact on this world. Without further ado, let's have some fun, stretch our perceived limitations, and get both weird and nuts over the course of the Reinvention Formula. Showtime, baby. Who is Craig Siegel and what triggered his reinvention? Your light is going to irritate a lot of unhealed people. Author unknown. I grew up with no clarity. I wasn't one of those kids who identified from an early age who I was or who I wanted to become, or even a career path. Both my parents, who I absolutely adore, kept my brother and me in a bit of a bubble. I was naive and didn't understand how life works. I was a popular kid, was always joking around and loved to laugh, and was definitely not the best student. I had street smarts, as you will soon discover, where I picked up many entrepreneurial endeavors, such as selling weed, taking sports bets, shoveling snow in the winter, and trading sports cards. I always had ambition, but it wasn't congruent with real-life impact and contributions. I played sports often, although I wouldn't consider myself very athletic until later in life when I developed a healthy obsession with the sport of running. I was short and built up insecurities because of my height, acne, and more. I was always charismatic and had a lot of friends, just not necessarily the best influences, but I own that and take accountability for choosing them. I started to develop an edge when I realized I had a strong, maniacal drive for anything I was passionate about. The problem was those passions were hard to find. I was a fun kid with a lack of direction and inspiration. I went to college at the University of Hartford in Connecticut, where I created a new set of friends and had fun. If I'm being honest, I didn't learn a whole lot in college from an academic standpoint, and I'll own that for not taking it too seriously. But the truth is, I wasn't interested in any of my subjects and classes. I'm on a mission to facilitate more personal development and entrepreneurship to be taught in school, especially at an earlier age. Education means more than just schooling. I never joined a fraternity because I was never into being hazed or treated less than my own self-worth. I did, however, have the best of both worlds because I was good friends with all the different frats, yet had none of the responsibilities or distractions. That was a fun time. But the most valuable education I got from school was being on my own, experiencing life away from home, and developing responsibilities and independence. I'm not super proud of some of the choices I made these first 20 years as I was working on myself and my identity, but I also wouldn't have changed a thing because these times shaped me, built me, and helped me cultivate an edge. I knew I was here for more, and I'd never give up working toward figuring it out. I think it's important to acknowledge my brother Mark here as well. I grew up in a very close family with an older brother who played both the role of my true best friend and my role model. My brother and I are the closest set of siblings in the world. A bold statement, I know. I graduated college and the next season of life began, where I would finally cultivate an identity, work ethic, and experience a ton of ups and downs. But first, I want to emphasize that I actually cared about how people perceived me or what they thought of me. This made a massive impact on my identity, leaving me with a sense that I lacked worthiness, but it also created that edge I mentioned earlier. It was as though I had a small flame burning inside me that began to grow little by little and ignite in both depth and volume. After college, I didn't have a concrete game plan. I came back to my parents' house and searched for an identity and path. I spent most of my days watching the stock market while laying on an obscenely oversized recliner in my small bedroom. This thing was half the size of my little room. I'll never forget the look on my mom's face when I had it delivered one day without giving her any sort of heads up. I'm laughing just thinking of this moment right now. My mom and I often didn't see eye to eye during this season of my life. I don't blame her one bit. I was immature and underachieving. It was pretty pathetic. Who was I? No idea just yet. I struggled with identity. Buckle up, Wall Street, here I come. 1. Wall Street. Rock bottom will teach you lessons that mountaintops never will. Author unknown. I became sick and tired of being sick and tired and got a job as a stockbroker on Wall Street through a good friend at a firm. Much more importantly here, while looking for inspiration and an upgraded identity, I stumbled upon personal development. Pivotal life moment right here. This moment changed the perception of what I grew up believing was in reach or possible for me. While searching motivational videos on YouTube, I remember discovering Eric Thomas, the hip-hop preacher, and watching exciting remixed videos consisting of inspirational speeches from movies such as Rocky, the best movie series ever, and the Dark Knight trilogy. I am a massive movie nerd to this day, by the way, and those Batman movies made a massive impact on me. I was fascinated with positive affirmations and began to understand that besides becoming physically fit, even more importantly, we could become mentally fit. This was a game changer in my life. It was at this moment I realized I could rewrite my story. I began to build my business, but more importantly, I began to cultivate an identity and evolve. I learned the power of a strong work ethic, being super positive and optimistic, and being committed and becoming open to limitless possibilities that await a healthy and positive mindset. Wall Street was a season of my life when, although I was working on myself, I was still unenlightened enough that I measured success by how much money I made. Looking back now, I know that was naive of me, but I was young, had no mentorship, and was figuring things out on my own. I give myself grace because I didn't know what I didn't know. In fact, we all need to give ourselves grace for some of our identities and skin we have shed. They play a role in our life stories. Wall Street stopped being fun, and the unpredictability and stress began to far exceed any of the positives. But something still remained. My personal development journey was gaining momentum, and I was obsessed with growth. Eventually, I discovered that Wall Street wasn't in alignment with who I was becoming, and I left to begin a new business as an owner, where we provided working capital to businesses across the country. I brought all my upgraded personality traits and character developments with me. With my new business underway, I found it challenging to re-energize my fire within and wake up excited the way I had years prior. I realized that change can be good, but it also must be in alignment with who you are becoming, and my new venture, although lucrative, was not interesting, exciting, or fulfilling to me the way I dreamed a career should be. And you better believe a career should be something you love, because you're going to spend a lot of time in it over the course of your life. This led to a dark season because, although I had developed motivation and ways to sharpen the axe, meaning to work on myself, read books, and accumulate knowledge, I lacked any real purpose and inspiration at my new endeavor. I honestly was never excited about it, but I needed a fresh start and some kind of change of scenery. Being a boss was fun, and I enjoyed helping my employees grow both personally and professionally. During these times, my morning motivational meetings with the troops were some of my favorite parts of this season. As it turns out, the writing was on the wall, but we'll come back to that. As much as I tried to sell myself on this new industry, the fact of the matter was, it wasn't in alignment with me, nor with the person I was growing into. The person I was during this season was someone who was attracting poor choices. You don't manifest what you want, you manifest what you are. Don't ever forget that. In fact, highlight it or write it down, or both. Around this time in 2018, I was going through quite a bit. It felt like a dark cloud hovered over me for a couple years. My dad, my best friend and hero, had been healthy his entire life. Now, as an older gentleman, he had a stroke which led to the discovery of lung cancer. His doctor did not have a positive bedside manner, and the prognosis was not great. I was also in a toxic relationship that I knew wasn't right, but I felt stuck. My advice there is that being single is absolutely okay and a beautiful season. Don't ever settle if you know deep down it's not the right fit. I also started drinking more than I like to admit to numb my misery and unhappiness. I made some poor investments, found myself in about $80,000 in credit card debt, and was the poster boy for rock bottom. Sadly, Mondays were my least favorite day of the week. They're now my favorite. And quite frankly, I didn't love myself. I was in pain. Trust me, emotional pain is harder than physical pain. I felt stuck in many areas and struggled to climb out or find any real excitement or new direction. I take full accountability and ownership for this season, but I'm grateful for the darkness that helped me want to see the light. I was at a low point, also known as rock bottom. Here's the good news. From down there, you can only go in one direction, up. Ask yourself, what challenging life moments helped shape you into the person you are today? 2. Marathon season. No one is ever defeated until defeat has been accepted as a reality. Bruce Lee. To this day, I don't know if I found running or running found me. It was divine and beautiful. I was desperate for an outlet. I started to gain the perspective that if I could just get some momentum, I could not only climb out of this darkness, but I could become available for the beautiful abundance the world is full of. One day, after consistently lifting weights for 15 years, I was feeling frisky and I went for a run. I was humbled with the challenge of completing 2 miles, breathing heavily, and turning a respectable jog into a power walk to finish. I went home that night and immediately cultivated a deep curiosity for the sport. Was I just not in great physical athletic shape? Or was I a long way from being anything remotely close to being mentally fit? As it turns out, it was the latter. The next day, I relentlessly set out to conquer a 5K run, 3.1 miles, without stopping. I did a bit better and became obsessed with this newfound sport. From there, I started to Google everything about running. I even picked up Spartan Up, a book by my now friend Joe DeSena, the founder of the Spartan Empire. This season of life provided a newfound passion and purpose for running, and what it takes to be successful at the sport. I'm romantic about running. I love that it's just you, God, your thoughts, and the road. The sport requires no opponent. It's just you versus you, and battling the sometimes negative voice in your head. It blossomed into a moving meditation for me, during which I would do my best thinking and deepest inner work. I signed up for an official 5K on Long Island, completed that, and moved on to a 10K, 6.2 miles. My obsessive personality is totally used for good here, because running provided so many positive life lessons and more productive behaviors. I began to learn about nutrition, hopped on a meal plan, started incorporating rest and recovery, and only had a cocktail once in a while. For the listeners here, I believe physical goals are so important not because of the actual goal itself, but who we become in the pursuit. Healthier, better decision-making, and disciplined human beings. After the scheduled 10K was completed, by now, I think you know what was on my radar next. If you're gonna think, you might as well think big. Another life lesson that would become a part of my DNA was thinking huge and focusing on what could go right as opposed to what can go wrong. Conditioning I really had to first unlearn and then relearn to harness as a superpower. Thinking big. I made a decision to sign up for the TCS New York City Marathon, 26.2 miles and 5 boroughs of road, bridges, and New York's loudest and most loyal. I wanted to really test myself at this season of life. I felt that if I could pull this off with minimal running experience, I could use it as a point of reference for other spectacular life events and opportunities. I would also have the chance to inspire my dad, who was battling the late-stage diagnosis of cancer, which was scary, tough on the body, and devastating to the mindset. So, although an audacious goal, I was ready to swing for the fences with a ton of upside and growth waiting for me on the other side. My next move was to assume massive accountability by declaring and posting about this moonshot and raising money for a charity in order to enter the race. This was a monster life lesson and applicable for anyone in any arena of life. When you tell people about your audacious goal, it suddenly becomes alive. It has energy. It has a pulse and a vibration. There's a lot at stake when we create outside expectations in addition to our inner expectations. This is one of the most brave and courageous things we can do as humans. Tell the world what we intend to do and then set out to accomplish it. The extra surge of accountability here is heavy and real. You may be able to let yourself down behind closed doors, but now that the world knows about it, it becomes a non-negotiable. This is powerful and a cheat code to dig even deeper. That season was so beautiful. I started to cultivate a new identity and self-belief that really gained momentum, like a small snowball rolling down a snowy mountain and picking up more mass and speed. Truth be told, I didn't have a ton of strategy for this race, but where I lacked strategy, I doubled down on heart and grit, two extremely powerful characteristics for a meaningful and successful life. Showtime. Here we go. The day arrived and I was ready to be a gladiator in the arena of running and also life. I remember walking up to the start line corral as they blasted one of my favorite songs by Florence and the Machine called Shake It Out, where I started to cry and was blitzed with an avalanche of emotions. I remember saying to myself, how amazing God is. A lot can change in a short amount of time. Here we go, baby. Frank Sinatra's New York, New York, now blasting, while 50,000 strong set out for different reasons, all with a common goal, to showcase the human spirit on fire and bravely run. The marathon is so beautiful. If you don't plan on running one, I highly suggest being a spectator at one. It's emotional, full of blood, sweat, tears, and spirit, as everyone has a different why for entering. It's amazing what we can accomplish. The marathon will humble you and can be your best friend or your worst enemy, but you'll be better for the experience. Period. End of story. I finished that marathon with family and friends cheering me on, my mom crying, of course. She always cries. I remember crossing the finish line and checking the time and feeling the most unique hybrid of emotions consisting of tremendous pride and yet showered with disappointment. I ran a 4:12 and failed to break the symbolic milestone of running under 4 hours. With one marathon under my belt, a newfound sense of accomplishment and confidence, I was getting closer to reinventing myself and transforming into an impactful, world-contributing juggernaut of a human. I had grown so much during this season and fell in love with the process that finishing a marathon, which was once the goal, was now not nearly enough. I had to break 4 hours and evolve even more, shedding old patterns, identities, and skin. Just doing something was no longer good enough, so doing something at an elite level with no limitations or lack of belief was the new standard. As of the writing of this book, I've conquered a total of 6 marathons, with a personal record last month, October 2022, in Chicago, of 3 hours, 31 minutes, and 25 seconds. We'll circle back to this season with more to come from the running journey and beautiful life lessons included. Ask yourself, What hobbies or passions in your life are you curious about taking to the next level? 3. Becoming available. Pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. The Dalai Lama. Marathon season provided a gateway drug to a much bigger life purpose and assignment. The marathon showed me that I'm capable of much more than I ever realized physically, spiritually, and energetically. It also transformed my perspective. I began to look forward to challenges and massive goals because it was no longer a question of whether I could accomplish it, but when. You see, the beautiful thing of putting yourself through hell voluntarily is that you cultivate grit, resilience, and an unshakable confidence. On the other side of pain is growth. These life lessons altered the way I began to see and show up in the world. For anyone who is currently struggling, suffering, or in a dark place, if you can see up, then you can get up. Then, when you go through some adversity, you'll begin to develop a bulletproof mindset. If you didn't die, then you can make a comeback. The marathons were tough, hard as hell, and brutal, yet also the most beautiful and rewarding human experiment. I found myself in a place where I started to ponder if I could be successful at things that were not natural to me and that I lacked experience in. What kind of impact could I make if I could become available for both my passion and my purpose in life? I still lack clarity during this season, but I was obsessed with both growth and the pursuit of identifying why I'm here. Spoiler alert, we are all here for a big reason. January 2020, I set an intention and sent my best friend, also known as my brother Mark, a text. The text said something along the lines of, I'm available and I'm going to change my life this year. And I don't know how, but I know I'm here for a bigger purpose than where I'm currently floundering around. In March 2020, the pandemic surfaced, lockdown began, and I shut down my office for what I thought was going to be about 2 weeks tops. For the first time in my adult life, I found myself without an organized schedule and work-related purpose. I looked around and I observed that basically everybody I knew was watching Tiger King on Netflix and doing a hell of a lot of day drinking, which, without being judgmental, I thought was a dangerous idea. My relationship with God had been growing rapidly for the past few years, and I doubled down on my faith when I started my running journey. God and I communicated often, specifically during long runs. I began to feel very called and intentional with this once-in-a-lifetime historic opportunity of extra time while the world stood still. I started tripling down on what I call sharpening the axe. I was reading a lot and watching anything that could put me in the right frequency to receive creative and divine downloads. I was absolutely relentless in my pursuit of finding something bigger, more impactful, and important that also would give me happiness and fulfillment. One day, it hit me like a nunchuck to the throat while I was thinking about what my actual passions and desires are in this world. Personal development is an obsession of mine. But what if it was more than a passion? What if it was a calling, my purpose, my assignment, and my contribution to the world? I remember thinking I didn't want this lockdown to end because I was onto something. I asked myself what my gifts were. What was my superpower? What were my skill sets? Everyone has them. As clearly as God has ever communicated with me up until that point, I heard a whisper, and it was revealed to me that I was humbly a very gifted communicator. I could move people. I could elevate people's spirits and infiltrate their souls. Now we were on to something, and I felt the most natural and exhilarating high of being alive and aligned. This was one of the most beautiful, important moments of my life up to this point. Now I knew I always had this in me, but the truth of the matter is, I was never available because I aligned myself with the wrong dream, surrounded by the wrong people, with an unorganized avalanche of both empowering and limiting beliefs that needed structure and prioritization. bang. From studying personal development for years, I cultivated a strategy to take my passion.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?